"Happy birthday, Liam," my mom chirped, her tone bright and sugary, a little too bright. You'd never guess that just an hour earlier she'd been laying on the guilt about how I should help pay off John's car loan. I sat at the far end of the dining table, staring at a slice of store-bought cake. The wax from the crooked 30 candle had already melted halfway down. Across from me, Dad was slouched in his chair, one hand holding a beer, the other hanging lazily over the backrest. My brother John, 28, jobless and allergic to responsibility, was scrolling through his new iPhone, texting with both thumbs. The same iPhone I'd bought him. I cleared my throat. "So," I began, trying to sound steady. My pulse was racing. "We need to talk about money." Mom blinked. "John, I can't keep paying for it," I said. "I'm trying to save and build something for myself, the utility, the grocery." I took a breath but paid off John's second. That finally, John up and scoffed. "You're acting like it's charity." I stared. "It is charity." He let out a short laugh. "Wow." Dad leaned forward, his eyes narrowing, just cursed at a "You can start with your brother's 6-figure," he snapped. "That's the real issue, isn't it?" Mom shot him a look. She wished. John froze, his hands still above his phone. "That's not my responsibility." The room went. Dad leaned back, lips twisting into a scowl. Mom broke the silence. "Well," she said, "I guess we know." The next day, when my stuff was stacked neatly, clothes, books, tools, and my laptop, freelance work, the locks had been changed. A note was pinned to the door. "Consider what you've done." That was all it said. I stood there for a long while, just staring at my mom's handwriting. Neat, sharp, perfectly recognizable. I didn't knock. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just took a deep breath, gathered my things, and walked away. That night, I drafted a message and scheduled it to send the next morning, because by then I'd already made up my mind. To understand how it got to this point, a birthday eviction and a note that felt like a slap, you have to go back about 10 years. I was 20 when John wrecked his first car. Drunk, of course. Mom cried, Dad screamed, and I, the responsible older brother with a steady job and a clean record, ended up paying the tow fee and loaning him $3,000 for repairs. He never paid it back. I told myself it was a one-time thing, but it turned into a pattern. When John dropped out of college, somehow it was my fault for not helping him study. When he lost 3 jobs in 1 year, I got a lecture about how some people struggle more than others. And every time his account went negative, Mom would call me, her voice soft and pleading. "Liam, sweetheart, he's your brother. Can't you help him just this once?" And every single time, I did. I paid his rent when he got evicted, covered his car insurance so he could drive to parties while I walked to work, bought groceries, paid off our parents' late property taxes, and I still managed to pay for night classes to get certified as an electrical systems technician. Meanwhile, John spent his days in the basement, messing with music equipment and doing nothing useful. The worst part? He didn't even pretend to be thankful. He acted like I owed him. "Liam's doing great," he'd say with a wave, like I was just his personal ATM. "He's got it. That's what big brothers are for." And my parents loved it. They ate it right up. I could have moved out, sure, but every time I mentioned it, Mom's eyes would fill with tears. "This house only feels like home when you're here," she'd whisper. Dad would roll his eyes and tell me not to be dramatic, reminding me that I only covered a small part of the expenses, the phone plan, mostly, as if that excused everything else. John, meanwhile, would grin and say, "Why leave when you've got it so good?" Yeah, so good. I was working 60-hour weeks, barely seeing daylight, while he borrowed cash for new headphones. I skipped lunches to save money, while Dad used my paycheck to fix the air conditioner, then told me to be grateful I didn't have a landlord breathing down my neck. Everything finally boiled over 2 months before my birthday. I'd just stumbled home from a 14-hour shift when I walked in and saw John, setting up for a party. When I walked into the living room, I froze. My gaming PC, the one I'd built piece by piece over 5 years, was hooked up to John's massive sound system. His friends were sprawled across the couch, half asleep, surrounded by empty beer bottles and pizza boxes. I glanced at my keyboard. Sticky, fantastic. I didn't yell, didn't even say a word. I just unplugged every single cable, carried the whole setup back to my room, and shut the door behind me. The next morning, Mom was waiting with that sharp, disappointed tone she'd mastered over the years. "You embarrassed him," she said, arms crossed. "His friends saw you storming around like a maniac." "They were using my stuff," I explained, trying to stay calm. "It's not just your house," she snapped back. "Everything here is shared." That word, shared, hit me like a slap. Shared? Like the mortgage I'd been paying? The groceries I bought? The power bill that literally came out of my account every month? That night, I sat down with my notebook and reviewed my finances. I was so close. Just a few more months of saving, and I could finally move out. For good this time. But then, of course, John had a brilliant business idea. crypto trading. He took $25,000 from his student loans, had zero intention of repaying, and dumped it into some sketchy trading app. 2 weeks later, it was all gone. Naturally, he blamed everyone but himself. The app, the market, his friends. Then he turned to me. "You could spot me 10 grand, he said casually, like he was asking for a ride to the gas station just to get me back on track. I actually laughed, and for the first time in years, I said no. That's when everything shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't dependable and I was selfish, arrogant, ungrateful. Dad cornered me after dinner one and asked, "You think you're better than us now, just because you've got a little money in the bank?" "I don't think I'm better," I said. "I'm just tired." The next morning, John tweeted something he probably thought I wouldn't see. "Some people only help you when they can cut them off and watch who they really are." 300. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Then came my birthday. Like an idiot, I still believed peaceful. A simple dinner, a small cake, no drama. Instead, I went straight into an ambush. Dad's eyes were locked on me the whole time, like he was daring me to bring up money. John kept cracking jokes about how I should open my trust fund, which doesn't even exist. Mom just kept smiling that overly bright smile, pretending to hold the family together through sheer enthusiasm. The dam finally broke when I said, "I can't keep paying for," and Dad shot back, "Then start with your brother's 6-figure debt." He didn't say it as a joke. It wasn't a question, it was an expectation. When I said no, there wasn't an argument, no shouting match, just silence. And then, the next day, they threw me out like I was trash. But they forgot who raised me to stay quiet, to keep calm, to never react. This time, I had a plan. I didn't respond to the note on the door, didn't knock, didn't text, didn't cry. I gathered my things, packed what I could into the back seat of my old Toyota, and drove to the cheapest motel I could find. One of those roadside places that smell like cigarette smoke and old carpet. The vending machine ate my dollar. The AC rattled like it was dying, and I sat on the edge of the bed with that crumpled note in my hand. "Consider what you've done." So I did. I thought long and hard, and then I hit schedule. See, over the years I'd learned a few things, one of them being that every family tells themselves a story, a kind of folklore. Ours went like this. Liam is dependable. Liam always helps. Liam always shows up. And because Liam always shows up, we can do whatever we want. What they didn't know was that I'd been keeping records for 2 years. Every Venmo request, every invoice, every transfer. Every time I helped, I saved a receipt. Every guilt trip, every passive-aggressive message, every time they told me I was being dramatic when I asked for boundaries, I documented all of it. And then there was the letter I'd written months earlier, when I first thought about leaving. It wasn't a goodbye letter. It was more of a confession. I wrote about how I secretly paid off their second mortgage after the bank called me, not them. About how John tried to steal my identity to get a $15,000 personal loan, thankfully denied, but still sitting on my credit report, and how my parents knew about it and told me not to press charges. "Family sticks together," they'd said. I was stuck, until I wasn't. So that morning, the morning after they kicked me out of the house I'd been paying for, I pressed send. And I didn't just send it to them, I sent it to everyone. My godmother in Tampa, Uncle Rob in New Jersey, Mom's cousins, Dad's siblings, their church group, everyone. Attached were the receipts, screenshots, bank statements, texts, voice notes, all neatly organized. I even included a spreadsheet titled, "What Liam Actually Paid For." Within an hour, it went viral across the family group chats. By lunchtime, I had 26 missed calls from Mom and 8 from Dad. John didn't call. He sent one text. "You didn't have to do that." It was short, cold, and honestly, it said everything. I didn't respond. At 12:37 p.m., I got a message from Aunt Sylvia, a woman I hadn't seen in years. "Good for you. I always knew they were using you. I'm proud of you, honey." And just like that, the fallout began. Apparently, my parents cared more about their spotless reputation in that quiet little suburb than I'd ever realized. The image of our perfect, close-knit, morally upright family shattered overnight. People started asking questions. Why was Liam paying the household bills while John was off on vacation? Why did that eviction note on the door sound like something out of a Lifetime movie? Why did John keep showing up with new headphones, sneakers, and tattoos when he didn't even have a job? Why was I living in the basement, like a tenant, when I was the one paying for everything? Dad tried to twist the story. "We were giving him structure," he told one of our relatives. "It was all agreed upon." Wrong move. Because, see, I'd attached an audio recording from the night they kicked me out. I'd hit record on my phone before dinner and slipped it into my jacket pocket, just in case. The voice memo was crystal clear. "Dad, then start with your brother's debts." "I'm not paying that." "Dad, then get out." "Mom, consider what you did. There was no spinning that, and just when things couldn't get messier, I filed a stolen identity report. The one I'd let slide the first time, not anymore. When the police showed up at the house to question John about that fake loan application, everything blew up. A neighbor caught it on camera, raised voices, a door slamming, John shouting about how he deserved a break. Someone, probably Mom, screamed, "We told you not to make this worse!" That clip made its way onto the neighborhood Facebook group, and just like that, the family who loved gossiping about everyone else's drama became the headline act. I didn't watch it unfold in person. I was too busy moving into my new place, a small one-bedroom apartment above a flower shop downtown. Quiet, simple, morning sunlight through the window, a kitchen that didn't smell like arguments. I paid the deposit with the money I should have been saving all along. That night, I sat on the floor with some takeout, no TV, just my laptop. I watched the chaos unravel online while I finally felt calm. They called dozens of times. When I didn't answer, Mom showed up at my job. She waited in the lobby, clutching a Tupperware of my favorite food, her eyes red and swollen. I met her outside. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "I'm not coming back," I said. "Calm, even cold, Liam," she murmured. "You're tearing this family apart." I actually laughed. "No," I said. "I just stopped holding it together." She flinched, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. That was the real turning point, not just for my family, for me. For the first time, I saw them for who they were. Not helpless parents or a struggling brother, but adults who'd made choices. Choices that finally came back around. It's funny how silence can feel louder than shouting. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waking up to John's music shaking the walls, or Dad slamming doors during one of his rants. I wasn't tiptoeing around Mom's moods, trying to predict which version of her I'd get that day. Instead, there was peace. That first morning I brewed coffee without checking if someone had finished the milk. I left my wallet on the counter and didn't worry it would disappear. I didn't have to justify every purchase, every boundary, every breath. No one asked for money. No one guilt texted me. No one manipulated me into feeling responsible for their mess. It was strange at first. I kept waiting for the quiet to end, half expecting to walk through the door and find John on my couch, shoes on the cushions, begging me to help him out one last time. But they never came. The calls slowed down, but they didn't stop right away. Mom left long voicemails, her voice cracking under the weight of guilt. "Liam, this isn't you. You've always been the strong one, the helper. Please don't let pride tear our family apart." Dad sent one text. "You should be proud of yourself." I didn't reply. Eventually, even the guilt trip stopped. 3 weeks after I'd moved out, a letter arrived, handwritten from John. It was short. "I know I messed up. I only did what they always let me do. But now it's all turned against us. Mom and Dad are miserable. No one talks to us anymore. You blew everything up. Hope it was worth it." No apology, just blame. That told me everything I needed to know. I didn't answer. Instead, I focused on rebuilding the life they'd almost drained from me. I finally enrolled in a coding boot camp, something I'd wanted for years but kept putting off because there was always another family bill to cover. I started freelancing at night, saving for my future this time, not theirs. I met real friends, the kind who didn't measure my worth by what I could give them, but by who I actually was. I joined a local climbing gym and rediscovered what it felt like to move, to take risks, to challenge myself not to carry people who refused to lift themselves. Therapy helped too. Turns out years of being the fixer leaves scars you don't see. My therapist called it parentification, when a child is forced to act like the adult in the family. She told me I was never selfish. I was just exhausted, and for the first time, I believed her. Meanwhile, back in the old house, everything started to collapse. Mom had to go back to work, something she absolutely despised. She'd spent the last decade playing home manager with someone else's money, mine. Dad started drinking more. Word got around that he'd gotten into a shouting match with a neighbor who asked about my situation. As for John, he finally got a job at a gas station. It lasted 6 days. He blamed the manager, naturally. That's John's favorite skill, finding fault in everyone but himself. The extended family pulled away. They'd seen too much, heard too much. The evidence didn't match the myth of our happy little family. And honestly, I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to fix it. I didn't show up for Thanksgiving. Instead, I spent it at a friend's house, a real family that laughed, told jokes, and passed around extra pie instead of guilt. I brought dessert. They called me family, and this time, they actually meant it. At Christmas, a card arrived from my godmother. Inside was a short, handwritten note. "You deserved better, and you finally claimed it. I'm proud of you." I cried reading it, not from sadness, but because for the first time ever I felt understood. You know what happens after you burn down your old life? Nothing dramatic, no explosions, no cinematic reconciliation, just silence. And it's the most beautiful sound I've ever heard. For the first time in 30 years, my phone didn't light up with guilt-ridden texts or desperate money requests. No frantic calls about John losing his license. No panicked voicemails about Dad's taxes, or Mom crying that we don't feel like a family anymore. They thought I'd cave. They always did. They expected guilt to pull me back. They assumed I'd feel lonely. But the truth, I felt free. I could breathe. I could stand in my own apartment, one I'd paid for, furnished and cleaned, without worrying someone would steal my food, take my keys, or sabotage me. I'd carried that family on my back for so long. I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand upright, to live for myself, to not be needed. They used to call me the backbone of the family. No, I was the fuse. And now that I'm gone, the fire they built around me has nowhere to go but back toward them. 2 months after the fallout, I ran into John. Fittingly, it happened at a gas station. He was behind the counter, a crooked name tag pinned to his shirt. His eyes looked hollow, dark circles beneath them. He still had that same fake confidence, but it was worn thin, like a bad copy of his old self. "Liam," he said with a smirk. "Didn't expect to see you back in town." I just nodded. He leaned forward. "You know you really screwed things up for them, right?" I blinked. "You mean when I stopped paying your debt?" He shrugged. "They're still cleaning up the mess. You really made a disaster out of everything." I looked him dead in the eye. "You're confusing me cleaning up my life with me ruining yours." Then I paid for my gas, walked out, and left him standing there, staring at the door like he couldn't believe the ATM had actually walked away. He still doesn't get it. None of them do. Because people like John never learn from consequences. Not until the money dries up, the spotlight fades, and there's no one left to blame. And I won't be around to watch that lesson unfold. Here's something no one tells you about walking away from a toxic family. The distance isn't what hurts. What hurts is realizing you were never loved unconditionally. You were useful, valued for your silence, your sacrifices, and your wallet. But love without respect isn't love, it's leverage. So when people ask me, would you ever talk to them again? My answer is simple: no, because I finally value myself more than their approval. For most of my life, I chased it like oxygen. Every good grade, every promotion, every bill I paid, hoping this time they'd finally see me, but they never saw me. Only what I could do for them. Now I see myself. I'm the man who paid off 3 mortgages that weren't his. The man who stayed up tutoring a brother who never tried. The man who kept the lights on in a home that never felt like home. And the man who finally said, enough. I built a new life from the ground up. One not rooted in guilt or obligation, but in peace and choice. It's quiet. It's stable. It's mine. I spend weekends hiking, reading, and taking classes. I finally started learning photography, something I'd put off for years because there was always another family emergency. I'm dating someone who doesn't need rescuing, someone who asks how my day was, and never calls me selfish for setting boundaries. And sometimes, late at night, I lie in bed and think about that younger version of me, the kid who tiptoed through his own home, who handed over his paycheck every week, who believed that if he worked hard enough, maybe they'd love him the right way. And I whisper to him, you got out. You made it. You don't owe them silence anymore. Let them talk. Let them twist the story. Let them call me ungrateful, dramatic, cold, because here's the truth they'll never say out loud. Without me, their system fell apart. Their lies didn't hold up without me holding them together. And the truth, my truth, finally came out. Loud, raw, unstoppable. And I didn't even have to shout. I just walked away. Because sometimes the quietest rebellion of all is keeping the door locked.